This is not another eComm podcast. I'm Ian Kaneshiro. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Neil Twa, CEO and co-founder of Voltage Holdings and co-author of Almost Automated Income with FBA. Neil's journey from a management consultant with IBM to the leader of Voltage Holdings is a story of innovation and entrepreneurship. Under his leadership, Voltage has become a powerhouse in Amazon growth strategies, specializing in launching, scaling, and maximizing exit strategies for brands. And today, Neil is here to share a wealth of insights for anyone looking to make their mark in the e-commerce landscape. We'll discuss how to unlock financial freedom by finding the right products and building an endless product pipeline. And Neil will also shed light on the green light method, a formulaic approach to optimizing profits. And he'll explain why it's so crucial not to get too attached to your products and how you can capitalize on existing successful brands to build your own multi-million-dollar brands. Additionally, Neil emphasizes something that he calls the platinum principle, which is always building your business with the exit in mind. And we'll dive a little bit more into that today. So Neil, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Ian. Thanks for having me.
And Neil, before we kind of jump into the topics of the day, is there anything else that you'd like to share about yourself? Introduce yourself to our audience?
You know, I'll keep it pretty brief. Most people are here to get something of value, and I certainly want to provide that today. In simple terms, you caught it. I mean, I've been in the idea of an entrepreneurial spirit since the internet came online. But when it did come online and I was in college, there was not a lot, to be taught about it. You had to learn it on the fly. You had to just get your hands dirty in the hardware and the software. And I mean, literally there was no training. There was no marketing classes. There was nothing online to go do. There was no YouTube, billions of hours of research videos. There wasn't even classes at college. And so we just had to go through and just work our way into whatever we felt was the, best for us. A lot of my friends ended up in the hardware and software programming and networking space. I ended up in the business side and more of the entrepreneurial and business development, but I had to go through the corporate world to get there because that's where money was being spent and that's where development was pushing, which was cool, but I knew eventually I was going to get out of it. And when the time came, IBM gave me an early retirement option in 2007. And I said, well, that's a great time to make a break. And everybody would be like, well, did you have all the money? Did you have all the stuff? Did you know exactly what you were going to do? Was it all planned out? I was like, heck no, man. In the first year, everything fell apart. So what I would normally remind people is just, if you're going to go for something, you got to go for it. If you think you can plan out business exactly to the T and expect a guaranteed outcome, then maybe business isn't for you and go get a paycheck. My personal experience, business is nothing but a series of daily problem solvings and the ability to pivot and problem solve. You have those, grit, tenacity, and perseverance and mentality, and you're willing to double down on effort, and then you will be successful in business. It will just take time. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Sometimes it takes a little shorter. I got to where I'm at after 17 years of hard daily pressing and failures and wins. And I think that most people want to hear the shortened version of that success story, the 2 years to an overnight success, but that's not usually how it works. And I hope to unpack some of that today in my own story for those that are listening on what it really takes to build a business with the end in mind and see the reward from that effort.
Yeah, most definitely. I can appreciate that. At the time that you kind of entered this space, you were in a different world.
Yes.
Right. And there wasn't different. It was completely different. And the Amazon space has drastically evolved during that time. And one of the things I find interesting, especially from the entrepreneurs that decide to take a career change and pivot their business models and everything in between is, talking about what are some of the things that you were able to take from your previous life, your life as a consultant with IBM to your own businesses, and how has it been, what are the things that have been really helpful, but also what are the things that you probably had to relearn and, that didn't translate as well?
100%. So when I started programming as a career, as a contractor, I had actually gone through school at that point to just I'd moved from what originally was a career in music because I went on a full ride music scholarship to college. And in the first few years, kind of discovered, well, that's not necessarily what I want to do. I jokingly, the Chris Farley analogy, say I was going to end up living in a van down by the river if I kept going, which, back then wasn't going to be cool. That was kind of a failure thing. Today, it's cool. They have entire channels around van life, and it would be really super cool. back then, not so super cool. So I had to go learn something. I actually taught myself programming on the side, HTML, then ASP, and then, database and driven C language programming. Went to start this computer science degree, and that completely sucked. That was not my aptitude. They were going to put us in computers that, were all for accounting and server-based stuff, and I was going to be plugged into a cubicle in a hole somewhere, and I just did not feel that was where
it wasn't
go, nor it was just not my mentality. I was bucking it, right? So I started teaching myself some programming, which led to my getting a contracting job at Sprint in Kansas City on the telco. Long distance. I had come from Oregon, where I grew up, and ended up in the Midwest, so across a number of places and then to Kansas City. And long story short, there was a job rec internally asking for people to come be a part of this new division of Sprint called PCS, Personal Communication Services, the first division of Sprint's mobile, launching the first mobile phone into the mobile market. Now, it sounds strange to people, but that was what was happening. And so the basic effect was I got my first W-2 job on the team that started to launch the first mobile phone. So my job was basically to be put in front of about 5 other people who were 30 years older than me and try to get them to collaborate into a 50,000 page website we ended up building to support the roughly 2,500 reps that were taking phone calls every month for people who were buying mobile phones, this first brick phone, the first, go-to-market phones. And then that expanded into very hyper growth. So I got to see the inside of this very fascinating world of growth, and where so many millions of dollars were being pumped into building this, and so many millions of dollars were coming in because mobile phones were just flying like crazy. So in that 5 years at Sprint, I was like the 5,082nd employee, if I remember correctly, somewhere in there with my badge number. And there was 80,000 employees when I left, right? So it had gone to 25,000 reps. It had become a global corporation. They were turning into an absolute juggernaut. For a while there, they were leading the marketplace in mobile phones. And
they had that one guy.
Yeah, right. Well, that was Verizon, of course. Yeah, I got to work with Verizon later on, which was fascinating because I jumped across different mobiles from T-Mobile to Verizon, got to see the inside of these different operations later. That was thanks to my time at IBM and having that experience in the mobile industry and telecommunications industry, as well as knowledge management and systems and software and AI, which was all part of what I was doing at the Sprint IBM days, developing databases of systems and technology and research and knowledge management to support tools and processes and people's access to it as fast as possible. And so that led to, IBM came in and picked up a contract with Sprint and said, hey, you guys did amazing. You've done all this work. You grew this company in 5 years like crazy, and you managed to kind of hold it all together. And I got to be, making friends with one of the partners who came in from IBM. He was leading a team of about 400 people on that project, got to become friends with him. And then really I discovered something in that moment. I hope somebody hears me when I say it now. It's who you know that gets you there, and it's what you know that keeps you there. So I had had enough experience to understand what was happening, even though I wasn't degreed in it, because technically there was no degree for what I was doing. And then it was a relationship-driven effort in which he said, hey, there's a position in IBM. You should go check it out. And so I did. I applied. I flew out to Armonk, New York. I had a 30-minute interview and walked out the door with a job, and suddenly I'm working for IBM. So I spent almost the next 5 years working in IBM, and IBM transitioned me from a corporate kind of relationship of the cubicle world, campus, building, office, to a credit card, laptop, and flight pattern that was ridiculous. We called it I've been moved, because I was going somewhere every week, 1 to 2 to 3 times a week. I was at that point just old enough to be able to rent cars without manager approval, because by up to 25, I couldn't even rent a car. So right. Up to Sprint, when we were doing all that work, I had to get manager approval to rent cars because I was too young. So by the time I got to IBM, I didn't have to ask for permission to rent cars anymore. I know it sounds like a stupid deal, but it was just this weird thing. Like, I have to do this business, and then I got to get somebody else's permission to get a car. So got past that, and IBM just started flying me around. I ended up in Sprint for a little while again, but I was on the IBM side this time, which was fascinating. Working with people I used to be in the corporate world with, I was now on a project with them working with the IBM, and then I ended up in Verizon in Seattle for a while, and down in T-Mobile, and then got into some of the oil and gas, high-tech industries, and did a number of projects across that, including things with the Armonk Research Group, which has to do with where all the patents from IBM come out. So that was fascinating. So I really learned about technology and business and development. And in the IBM years, I really learned about relationship development, project marketing, in a very different role in terms of communication with folks. Very much expanded that idea that by the time I got through with a laptop and computer, I could work anywhere. And once I realized I could do that, the transition to becoming my own work anywhere, work from home kind of person was very normalized in that way and didn't seem very radical. And so I had kind of a pattern of behavior. So by the time I left, it's like, well, I can do this. I got a credit card, I got a laptop, I can make money. And that seemed very obvious at that point. And I had some side hustle stuff. I had a little game server company that I was running on the side. I always knew entrepreneurialism was going to be there. And I was running a little game server company. And we were basically allowing voice over communication technology for multiplayer online gaming at that point, which was not embedded in the games like it is now. So people who wanted to play in a multiplayer format had to use my servers to talk to each other while they were gaming. And at one point, we had about 20,000 users on that system. So I knew that I was going to move entrepreneurial. It was always kind of setting up to be that way. Things changed, life changed. I ended up having to go through a divorce and lost that business. Major life pivot. You ask about learning lessons in my life from that period. That was a big learning lesson about myself, about relationships, about, putting work above family in that case that led to the kind of my part in the destruction of that marriage, which I take responsibility for, of course. And so for that, it was a really personal, interpersonal time for me to kind of learn and realize what I had done as a person and needed to move past this idea of, more is better and bigger is always better. And it really changed my perception on the value of purpose over profit. While profit is important, I will speak to it. It is not the purpose of the business or the outcome expectation of your lifestyle, but it will drive it with purpose, and it will come if your purpose is focused. So that was some of the biggest learning lessons I gained during that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you hear about people that, go through, different phases of life and are also realize that life is short and, you need to make money to pay the bills and keep the roof over your head. You also need to live. It's the whole idea of living to work or working to live, right?
Well, and where's it tie, in my opinion? Where's it cross over? And there's an obvious point for me where it crossed from scarcity to abundance. So you can actually be in scarcity, fighting to, try to gain more money, get a better promotion, do more of this, you can gain traction in your business, do the next big deal. Many of that actually looks like abundance to the world, but in my experience, it's actually scarcity minded. Abundance minded says, as the deals come, the opportunities will come. As the purpose drives forward, the profit will be there. And in abundance, there are more than enough deals, more than enough people, more than enough products, more than enough opportunity. It's just, I'm going to be more patient and wait for that to come because there's an abundance of it. So as I go and move and do what I do, the abundance will come out of that if purpose leads profit. So one is abundance, one is scarcity. It seems odd to say it that way. And I've been in scarcity, especially, people are like, well, that's easy for you to say now, Neil. I said, no, actually, I have a family of 3 and one pregnant kid on the way. And I went through a bankruptcy and we had nothing but scarcity when they were taking the van out of the, at 10 o'clock at night and towing it away from the garage in our house because we couldn't make the car payments. Right. So I've lived in scarcity and had children involved and family and had to go through that process. I know what it means to feel that scarcity. I also know what it means to feel abundance, and abundance doesn't necessarily equal what everybody thinks it does. Abundance does not just equal money. That is people's idea that the solution to problems is money, but money can create new problems. And just having more money doesn't necessarily create better solutions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Biggie Smalls had a song that said that more money, more problems,
Yeah, it is a truth to a degree. So there's a balance in all of those things. And of course, more money doesn't always mean more problems. It just means there's an opportunity for things to be done, easier or on the sly or just not with necessary amount of thought and due diligence. And sometimes you can, use scarcity on accident and find yourself in the middle of a problem that looked like an opportunity. And then that could turn into even bigger problems.
Yeah, most definitely. And, when we're talking about this idea, kind of shifting us back to some of the original topic points, we're talking about this idea of having problems versus opportunities. I know you have a system that you guys use in your company where you kind of will mark different opportunities as stage using a red light, green light system. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you can kind of make decisions, on the product side, but also probably on, the project and ideation side of your company?
Yeah. So as I transition past IBM and eventually get into my own business model and start to figure out what's going on, I got really good at paid traffic media and online lead generation, which led me to doing very well developing businesses, leads and lead flow, but actually never creating it for myself. in essence, is kind of a backwards thing. I got to be very good. I kind of worked myself into a very, in the quadrants of Kiyosaki, I got myself stuck in the self-entrepreneurial stage. And that was going to make it hard for me to grow, because I knew that to grow a business, I had to grow with people, I had to grow with systems. I had discovered many years ago that, products will get you to a certain amount. Different products can be info or physical products or just a product of learning, can reach a certain level. But brands is what will actually take you ultimately out into the world that you want, the notoriety of the brand and stuff beyond just the products that are within it. So as I went through that phase and realized that, and started to establish product brand for myself around 2011, 2012, I discovered Amazon and said, hey, there's a really cool mechanism here that is generating a lot of that opportunity. It's got its own customer base. It's got its own fulfillment system. So I don't have to touch the products. And that was a big deal. Like, how do you set up fulfillment for products and move it? Well, they kind of solved that problem with their fulfillment system. So I really just focused on the marketing. I focused on what I was good at, which was building the listing and building the copy and building the desire to, get that product. And Amazon would sell the product and deliver it to the customer. It's a pretty cool relationship, right? So in that process, I really learned about what good product looked like and what good brand looked like and what bad product looked like. And in the first few years, it took about 3 years for us to finally hit 7 figures. I'd met my partner during that time frame. A mutual friend had invited us to meet, and we kind of struck it off. We were basically, two halves of the same coin. He's very different in his thought processes when it comes to logistics and framework and process thinking. And he has a very different kind of a profile for his DISC assessment, which is different than my DISC assessment. I'm more DI and he's more ISC, which basically is 2 separate parts of us. So we can kind of be unique in one. And so we started to look at this thing, and he's a systematic process guy, and I really wasn't. I was the marketer who follows systems and builds them and then hands them off. And that turned into a really, how do we, take the success we started to get in 3 years and turn that into a system, a formulaic process. And so we developed a spreadsheet originally, and in that we plugged in all the numbers and calculations and started to track, what the success was. It really is true. You can't grow if you don't track and measure. And so at the end, we started to put together a process and needed a simple thing to call it. And so we came up with the green light process, which was basically, if all the data points we need to see from products we're having successful match this data set, okay, basically, then it's green. And if it doesn't quite match, then what data points change it to yellow? So it's like caution, because these data points don't match up with ones that match the products we're having success with. So we used our existing successful products as a benchmark to start looking for products we could replicate in the market. Now, it may not sound right to somebody who's listening to this, but we sell data to an engine, okay? Online, anywhere you sell data, whether it's Facebook, Amazon, TikTok, or whatever, we're selling data to an engine. And in the case of Amazon, it's selling products to people. So it's delivering product just in time in 30 seconds or less to people. We're there to, as a third-party seller, provide the best data possible for the person who wants to buy that product and capture their demand as quickly as possible, so that Amazon can sell them that product and deliver it. And by proxy, we make, money doing that. So the systematic process was, how do we continue to replicate that into more products, more brands, and be able to teach others to become operators, to be able to grow the people who were necessary to follow the standard operating procedures. And so the green light process was, if the data is green, it's great. If it's yellow, then we be cautious. If it's red, we don't go. And we were able to teach more people how to follow that process to success. They were able to replicate their success, replicate it through additional businesses. One of the businesses that we started in 2012 has sold more than 474,000 units. That's my personal results and personal stories. I got a team and a group behind me and a brand now, and that made it a lot easier. But in the end, the process is what has had that one product and that one brand continue to crank since 2012. And of course, we've gone on to launch multiple other brands and multiple other businesses. And we've brought a number of people into that process so they could follow it. And even people who wanted to do eComm and never had the experience, they could follow the green light process and find successful products. So yeah, it has become formulaic because it's data driven. It's now in a system we call our green light dashboard, which the software node hunter goes out and finds these products and searches into specific areas of Amazon and only return product ideas that match our criteria. So now it's a kind of an more automated research system. And then we follow a particular process, a methodology, and the system to determine competition and value of the product, its demand, the profitability of that product, so we can predict growth and scale from products that we test. And it's now just a process we follow, our operators follow it, and We can take products that are in the market and determine whether or not they have more upside potential and find more. We can come and develop new products from market demand and innovate them in the marketplace and take them back out. And so, yeah, it's systems in business should usually follow a process at some point for repetition of success. That's where you move from the entrepreneurial stage, where you're trying a whole bunch of things, which is what entrepreneurial really means, to a business owner who is now working a particular process, a particular line of business, and is growing that line of business out of standard operating procedures and methodologies developed in that proprietary part of that business. You're now a business owner. So it's kind of an evolution. Business owner after that, if you continue the quadrant forward, you go to investor. So eventually, if you're doing great in business, you need to invest. More products, more people, more systems, more brands, whatever, you become an investor.
Okay. And so when we're talking about like this, the green light system,
Yeah.
one of the things that comes to mind is, you have these products that are flowing through and have these different criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that different products probably can fall in between these different levels. So one might be yellow this quarter or this month, might be green next quarter.
Correct.
And what is green this quarter might be yellow, 6 months down the line.
That's correct.
And so I think the idea of fluidity is something that's really interesting when we're talking about the products that we sell on Amazon, because there's trends that we have to track in the marketplace. There's seasonality of goods. What's popular, this Christmas isn't going to be popular next Christmas. And how do you kind of account for that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know? How do you see? Does this system allow to kind of spot those things and understand that maybe this is a time of year, maybe this is something that has run its course, and how do
you create stability in the product, longevity versus trends, ebbs and flows, and volatility in the marketplace? Because there is volatility, right?
Sure.
And what we do is we look for about 6 different product areas that the data has basically said for us means there's about 6% of the billion SKUs on Amazon that we should target, because they would fit the demand capture platform that is Amazon, and also be able to go out and grab brand awareness through marketing, ads, TikTok Shop, Shopify, other demand capture platforms where that audience conversation is occurring, and be able to see that even in the television, okay, which up to 30% of television ads now fall back to Amazon. Create that ability for us to capture that demand on Amazon, okay, whether it's our demand we created or it's demand that somebody else created that we're stepping in front of. So we want to capture that demand. So in that way, we only focus on products and data that match a longevity or an evergreen state. So we don't do seasonal products in the brands that we launch. We look for blue sky, evergreen. And in our green light process, we trail out all the way to 12 months what we predict that product will do on average every daily, weekly, month over 12 months. And then that projection tells us up to a 40-foot container of that product turned over one time in 1 year. That's what we forecast the projection of that product to be. Could it turn over 2, 3, 4 40-foot containers in a year? Absolutely. We have some that do that. But some do that in a month. But the end result is we want to predict where that longevity stays in the pattern of the data for other products in competition. And then we want to match that, right? Which is why we're only looking for a specific linear line of products and not where the mass of products actually is. Because in the mass of products, you will find volatility. You will find products that like fidget spinners, where people will take crimes of opportunity, say during the COVID period, to do certain types of products that are just opportunistic, but they're not really looking at what is a continued demand for product that has gone year by year. And there's slight innovations in those products that change based on time, but there continues to be demand. So in the data, we see the trends that show that that's there. We see that there isn't saturation because there's enough innovation of the products and differentiation to make brand competition, not product competition. Because to your point, what will happen is brands, that I'm sure will have a life cycle. Products will have a life cycle, and products can become saturated, but brands do not. So one of the biggest differentiator is to continue to move a pipeline of product ideas into the market and follow that data, that 12-month data, to launch products have a year-by-year opportunity within them. Do they all have a life cycle? Absolutely. Some go longer than others. Some are meant to be shorter, but to overcome that, we continue to innovate and continue to put new products into that brand line. And I think that's one of the bigger things many people I hear don't say, is that we're always innovating and have a continuous pipeline of product ideas going to test. And nothing is ever just stationary, because it's a constantly dynamic, changing environment. And like you said, they can change during the year with Prime. Like Prime Days have now become a 2-day crazy festival of sales. Right. You've got to prepare for that. And then by the time you get to the holidays have been growing every year and it's predicted to be up again this year in terms of sales volume for the year for e-commerce. So we have to look into that trends and see how those products are performing. So we don't do a lot of what sounded like your question. We don't do a lot of what I would call more opportunistic products based on demand. We look for evergreen long-term products. Maybe we're a little bit more boring that way because eventually business in some way gets a little boring when it's just continually doing the same thing. So we can launch new brands and new products and make it less boring. But the intent is to, not to do things like seasonal, not to look at opportunistic products, but look at trends that might be rising that have a continual longevity to them, year by year, month by month, if you will. And that kind of helps us overcome some of those challenges of volatility that will exist. What we'll typically see is a positive volatility. One of those changes Amazon just made for the pricing fees has created a lot of volatility in the market. People are having a huge problem. But in actuality, I see what Amazon's doing. I see them making the changes for the positive impact of the marketplace. I see them making the changes for basically turning inventory over quicker to customers. And I see them getting rid of some of the bad actors in the system who've been kind of manipulating it, causing a lot of problems for those of us who want to get to reps and seller performance and need help and can't because they're trying to answer 80 tickets a minute because of all the people who've been jacking with the system. And they've most likely been sued in some cases about in the background about a number of these things. And so now they're requiring certifications for batteries and button batteries and supplement certifications and other things that are forcing to kind of clean up the market. And I really look forward to the next year as things are cleaning up because it actually creates opportunity. And frankly, our fees actually went down and opportunities gone up in the way we do our green light process because we're doing all private label brands. What you will hear is a lot of people are doing wholesale, arbitrage, drop shipping to a degree, and the other models that are not private label brand registered with IP. And because of that, they're getting affected negatively by the market pretty bad. And that is just market competition at the end of the day. Amazon's managing it. We have to manage our numbers. That's part of playing in this marketplace.
Most definitely. And, I think what it ultimately comes down to is just as a business owner, being able to, make calls based off of what is right for the business and for the business operation, and which sometimes gets separated from, why we try to start things in the beginning because what's good for the heart. Yeah. Because you often hear, you hear this age old adage, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. And so what you hear from Amazon sellers, what they kind of shift into is they say, I love baseball. So they want to get into selling products that are related to baseball because it's something that they're interested in, something that they love. But what I'm hearing from you is after a certain point, we need to just put that aside and we need to let the market tell us essentially what we need to sell versus kind of that love and passion for a certain.
There's a component to that, if I might clarify this just a little bit. It's what I have heard before, and one of my guests brought it up, and we had this conversation that kind of unpacked the whole idea behind what we call the circle of confidence, which is in essence, if you have that idea that you're confident in the name and you do sports and you're in baseball and that's something you're interested in, it really has to be in the numbers, what products you do that balance that in to the business, go by the numbers and not by your emotional gut feel. I think though that people disconnect the idea that if I'm just passionate about it, someone else is passionate about it. And it's that whole, if you build it, they will come. And they kind of forget the business and don't really know the numbers. And so they fail on the passion. And we're like, well, I know I love baseball. And everybody's like, well, don't do that. You'll not love baseball anymore. And I was like, that's stupid. If you love baseball, find something in the circle of trust that actually pencils in and becomes a business. It runs by the numbers, and then you will enjoy running the business because you are a little more agnostic, what we call don't marry the products, right? Steal someone else's girlfriend instead. There are plenty of product opportunities to say to the market, hey, I like baseball. You like baseball too. What about this? And not get hung up if they don't like it and said, hey, what about this version of it instead? Oh, we like that one a lot more. That's 5 sales a day. Okay, well, maybe I can make that 10 or 15 sales. What about this variation of that product? What do you like about, oh, we like that one. That's 100 sales a day. But you would have never guessed correctly, even if you're super passionate about it. There are different avatars within every buyer segment across every platform in the psychology of the buyer. Amazon itself in a psychology of a buyer is coming in with a preconceived notion, a pre-bought purchase in their mind, and they're simply looking to validate that as quickly as possible, knowing that they can return it if they don't find out what they're looking for. Okay, so they're in to not just necessarily browse, they're in to buy. They're looking for that specific answer. And A lot of times people confuse that process and tend to want to oversell their listing when in actuality, they're not capturing the intent to buy, right? And one of those ways is they get confused between their love of the product base or whatever they're doing and not enough attention on who is in that circle of confidence. If they can write down and then, put out the little, consider like a wheel, a spoke, and go out and say, okay, somebody who likes baseball also likes this, and then start circling around that confidence. What's this person also buying? What do they also like? Well, if they like baseball, okay, then they may like the merchandise. If they like the merchandise, they may like other sports. If they like other sports, what's the second most likely sport someone who likes baseball is also going to like? And from there, can I find somebody in my confidence, somebody I know, even myself, who can speak about that? Could be Uncle Jim, could be Aunt Sally, could be my cousin, could be my wife or significant other, who's going to say, hey, I really love this and this is what I like. If it's in that confidence, it's something you could possibly sell to the market. The market was smart enough to tell us, but not everybody is an Elon Musk. And I think a lot of people get into the world of e-commerce and think they need to be Elon Musk or they got to get on Shark Tank or they're never going to be successful. And that's the wrong narrative.
It's the wrong narrative.
It is the wrong narrative. You can pick a generic product in Amazon, okay, that meets the green light criteria, launch that into the test market and find out the biggest answer to all of the problems in business. And that is, can I sell it? Sales fixes everything, okay? Can I sell this product? Can I sell this product more than that product? Could this product sell more than all the other ones combined? And they don't process that in the methodology. They don't use the numbers to tell them where to go. They use gut instinct and feel, and that's not how you run a business, right? Gut instinct can run you into the ground. Yeah, it's good to have gut instincts in business, but the numbers will ultimately pan out, right? And so if we test and test, by the time we get through 3, 4, and 5 product tests, it will tell us exactly where the money's going to be made. It's like an investment strategy. If I'm going to go out and buy into a company, unless it's a really large company with lots of historical data, I'm not going to spend $5 million on that company. But what I prefer to do is go spend $1 million in 5 companies and see those companies, see one of them take off, one of them will fail, 2 of them will do sort of average, and one will make more than all the others combined. Because it's a law of averages. It's statistical.
That's the 80-20, and that's 80-20 rule. What ends out
80-20. So in the same methodology, you're going to need to launch 5 products on Amazon if you're brand new and you're listening to this. If you're an existing business owner who's wondering, why can't I figure out what the next product is? Launch at least 5 more variations of that product in your circle of confidence around there. And one of them, if you've done it right, will start to take off and show you what the market wants. We're just simply not smart enough to tell the market what it wants. We're not Elon Musk. Stop trying to act like it, guys. Just go and test the process. Test quickly. Test on small amount of units. Okay, test 100 units and say, hey, can I sell this product? The market will tell you, yeah. And if you're over the target because you're making sales, then you can probably double or triple the amount of sales you're making by simply optimizing 2 millimeter shifts, just optimizing your listing, your copy, and your images and split testing very slowly. Okay, finding out what works, test one thing, do it again, test an image, do it again. If it works, great, leave it, and just dial in the keys on that kingdom and what you're basically doing. Okay, if you can visualize this, Amazon's is like a tree. It's the K-pop tree, the largest tree in the Amazon, right? And it's a big filing system of information. It is just a big data filing set. I've worked on these things. They're just huge. But it's got this little latent semantic AI-driven engine called A9 running around inside of it, telling everybody and pulling data together and trying to show things to people as quickly as possible. About to be updated to Cosmos soon, which I'm very excited about. And so the next thing it's doing is basically trying to categorize that person and all their data points to the type of products that make sense. So it's a river of information flowing by demand. 7,800 units a minute are moving through Amazon, and it's trying to put a product in front of that demand as quickly as possible to meet the need of that customer based on all the things it knows about it. Okay. And in that way, if I understand that, let's say I'm standing over here on the shoreline and I'm looking at the river, and if I'm an Amazon seller, I hear all this nonsense about, well, coax it in, do these coupons, do all this stuff, do all this outside Amazon stuff, and you'll get the river to move to you. That's not how it works. You've got to move to the river, which means your listing that is currently not optimized has to become optimized and moves closer to that stream, that Amazon river. And once you hit it, it'll take off like crazy. And then you just leave it alone. Don't touch the dang thing, right? Because once you're dialed in there, you're now in the slipstream, and growth will be the byproduct of that. So again, I think people miss this point in the process, is they are literally standing on the stream trying to coax the river over to them. And instead, they need to figure out how to get their listings dialed in data-wise So they get access to that slipstream of traffic, and then it will take off like crazy. But it comes through product validation, product market tests, and then market tests can become launched. I put good data, okay, to work. I put money after good products. I don't go buy, like this guy who came in the other day, was like, buy 8,000 units of a product I've never sold, and then spend the next 2 years trying to turn it into a business. That's as dumb as today's world is sitting down and writing a business plan for a year before you ever launch the business. I'll have launched 2 businesses in that time frame and be already making money. It's a wrong process.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that, that analogy of the river reminds me of is something that, me and my colleague Adrian, we talk about internally a bit. Oftentimes when you're driving through the city, there's always construction everywhere.
Yep.
They might be building an overpass. They might be building, in our area, they're trying to build like an above ground light rail.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is in order to make these things happen, you have to move roads. So they literally have to they literally have to create new roads and pave new roads to temporarily give traffic access to certain areas while they build something that's bigger and better.
That's a great analogy. Otherwise, you'd be like some of those sellers I see today who go up there and they run up to the road and there goes like, where's the road? What's happening? They just stop. And they're like, who's going to build a road? Like, where does it go? I don't understand. And everybody else is going off on the new road and going around it. They just stop there and start yelling, where's the road at? Why isn't this happening? What's going on? It's like they get stuck.
Right. And so it's this idea of having a bit of a longer term mindset and understanding that sometimes you need to build these detours in order to build, the highway or the railway and something that's bigger and better.
Which why we say 3 to 5 years to build a business minimum. Everybody wants 3 to 5 months or 3 to 5 minutes because of life. I get the scarcity, I get the challenge, I get the working, I get the 9 to 5 lifeline. I've been there, and all of those things I'm speaking from experience. Okay? It's not like I grew up in a trust fund. My dad worked for 30 years at the same company, and we weren't poor, but we didn't have anything else besides what we've got. Everything else I had to get, I worked for. So the end result is you need to be able to pivot, tenacity and perseverance. You need to treat every business venture like a 3 to 5 year opportunity, give it the time necessary, the attention, the energy required to make it successful. And people are like, well, I only have so many hours. Like, no, you're taking time as a scarcity. Well, Neil, there's only 24 hours. We only have so much time. That's right. So you get to actually choose what you do in that time frame, and you will prioritize what is a priority for you. So in essence, we have to change the idea from saying I don't have time to do these things or the energy, and instead say it's not a priority. And if it's not a priority, then so be it. Say it out loud and own it. But to your point,
it has to be okay.
Be okay with it. It's going to take money to make money in a physical private label business model. There are too many people selling courses that don't tell you the truth about that. I won't let my builder start for less than $35K in their business today on Amazon to go multi-channel into Shopify, TikTok, or other places, which you will do because that is a omni-channel strategy. You cannot have just an Amazon FBA business, okay? Then they need to understand what the capitalization requirements are to make it a successful startup. Now, you're going to do a lot more than $35K to grow these businesses over 3 to 5 years, okay? If you really want to get a 7, 8-figure business, you're going to have to spend $500,000 to $1 million in 3 to 5 years minimum into the business. Now, that's everybody's like, oh, brain explode. It doesn't mean it comes out of cash. I mean, it comes out of revenue. It comes out of operational expenses. It may come out of smart use of credit and credit lines for growth of capitalization. It doesn't all have to come out of pocket. It's going to come through the business, but it will come if you understand that that's what it's going to take to get to that level of business.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily come all at once.
It certainly doesn't all come at once. Once the products take off and they start to go, you're going to have to capitalize that product. And the two things you have to do to a product that starts to take off is buy more inventory and push in more marketing. Those are operational expenses. However, if done correctly and you focused on the profit per unit, and for us, it's got to be more than $12 in profit per unit. We prefer more like 24 to 36 to 48 in profit. So we typically see products $50 to $200 plus in our retail price points for us. And so we want that ability to acquire that customer. You do not have a business if you cannot acquire a customer. So we will want to know that we can confidently acquire a customer and still have a net profit per unit after we do that. And other people will argue, well, Neil, that's a cost. That's advertising cost of sale. It has to be 30% or less. No, you see, I don't care. And that's why you and I aren't going to be the same. I will spend 80 to 100% a cost to acquire that customer. And if you won't do that, we're not competing at the same level.
Yeah.
People are going to have to understand that about the market today. And it is both a challenge now, greater than it has ever been, to enter the market. Let's be very clear, is more challenging now to enter the market than it has been in years past. However, okay, you ready for this one? Just like Warren Buffett, when there's blood in the streets, there's money to be made. That means the opportunity cost has changed dramatically for those who do get involved, okay? It means the barriers of entry have changed, which means other people are going to move out of that market. Competition is going to shift. The money always just moves like a river. It changes directions. It moves. And right now, a lot of it's moving out of real estate and other places and looking for new ventures like e-commerce and business development, or, deals and business buying, as people want to come to us continuously about buying companies. And so the end is that money is moving. It may feel like there's none right now, none of it for you, but it's actually just moving. And your opportunity is to move and pivot and go with it. Don't argue about it. It's just the way it's moving. You can't change the rover of currency. You've got to go with it. And right now, opportunity costs are greater than they've been, but the opportunity benefit, what's going to come out of this, is huge. It really is, because competition is falling out of the market on multiple locations, not just Amazon, but in Shopify, TikTok, etc. And it's opening up gaping holes of opportunity that we haven't seen in 3 to 5 years. Big opportunity. Right. And so we're moving. We were literally on a call yesterday that's talking about buying 50 companies in the next 5 years, right? So we're on target to acquire about 50 companies. The deal is being finished, and we're looking, this is the time to go buy.
Yeah. And, and some of those are going to hit, and some of them are going to miss, but they're
not all going to go and be ringers. We can't guarantee. No one can guarantee they're going to be ringers. No one can guarantee business. Stop looking for guarantees. You are the guarantee in your business. You're the backstop. Okay. If anybody promises you 100% guarantee in anything in business, run from it. Okay. Those are, if they're not telling you results aren't typical and it doesn't work for everybody, then they're lying to you. But it will work in time for those who persevere. It will work for those who are willing to spend the time to learn it and apply it and dedicate the money and time required to make it work. It will work. It may take you a little longer than other people, so stop comparing yourself and get the frick off social media. Get out and actually do something, and you will see that if you can do it in 3 to 5 years, then you may do it for the rest of your life, and that could be an amazing change.
Yeah. Neil, as we kind of wrap up this episode, we're talking a little bit about, about longevity and taking these kind of long-term strategies in terms of having successful businesses. And the one thing I wanted to hopefully have you touch on before we wrap up is the thing that we mentioned on earlier in the episode about the platinum principle, this idea of having an end game, having an end goal,
100%,
in terms of the exit strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So everybody talks about their 3 to 5 year plan, and that's typically backwards into the idea that you're going to pivot into something. It could be in the corporate job and a promotion. It could be in your business and new ventures. It could be a lot of different things. For us, and in the world that we live in, it is the business itself moving into a saleable state in 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what's a saleable state? It means certain requirements of the criteria for business in the world that people are looking to invest in, from private equity groups, private investors, home offices, family offices, etc. Even corporate capital that wants to buy into that opportunity that someone took the initial risk for. Okay. As business owners, we take the initial risk, right? So if you've got a 3 to 5 year plan, in my mind, in e-commerce now, it should be building the business from the very foundation with the end in mind, because it may be worth more then than any time during your business building phase. Yes, you can make profits. Yes, you can pay yourself great money during the business building phase, but understand when the time comes to make that exit, you're going to get it on a multiple of the potential profits in the business, or even what's called seller discretionary earnings in the business, depending upon how it is being positioned in the marketplace. Meaning you're going to get a multiple version of that profit. So in your brain, for example, in simple terms, if you build a business and it says it has $1,000 in profit, I know it's pretty small, we're going to use small numbers, and someone says, hey, I'm willing to pay you 4 times that, okay? It means they're going to pay you $4,000 based on that $1,000 in profit, all right? That's a pretty good change. Why is that important to look at? Inflation is transitory. It is always increasing. It's been increasing more in the last few years than it ever has in America. And it doesn't show any sign of slowing down. What does that mean? It means money is worth more now than when we started this podcast, or less, excuse me.
Right.
Worth less now than when we started this podcast. It'll be, by the time we go to sleep tonight, it'll be worth less. And by tomorrow, it's going to be worth less. So the money you get now is worth more than the money tomorrow. So if we build these companies up and sell them and can gain back 2 to 3 years or more of profit from that venture, we can then put that capital back to work in another location. Could go to a passive income, could go to an almost automated income over here, could go to building a new business I'm actively involved in. It could go into investment portfolios that turn over profit. It can go into cryptocurrencies or wherever you invest it. But now you have the opportunity to invest. You have an opportunity to build, again, business even greater and faster, like we do and teach our people how to do, which is build multiple businesses to exit. That it is the platinum principle. It is the strategy of business, grow to exit. Right. Okay. And when you set yourself up in that process, things get to moving pretty fast, because when you do your first exit, it becomes easier to do your second and third. And by that point, you've got enough capital and you got the right people and systems in place, and it becomes formulaic in that process. And that is a huge opportunity. So for 3 to 5 years, if someone's willing to work the business, follow the process, see the success, they have an opportunity to sell that. It's an asset, just like any other asset. We have physical products. You get inventory. That's one of the cool things about this business model. There's a lot of tax benefits and other things to having cash moved into physical inventory. And of course, you get the virtual opportunity of a business that allows you to go anywhere and be anywhere. I live on 50 acres in the country and homeschool my daughters and hang out with my family and go on walks, and we travel as a unit when we want to travel. We do. Our lifestyle now is a design. But make no mistake, folks, that didn't happen overnight. This is not 17 years to an overnight success. It's taken time, energy, and attention and money to get to that place. Now, working with somebody and making things go faster and using things like the green light process can simply consolidate that time to a shorter amount. That's why I know 3 to 5 years is now realistic, because I've done it for 17 years. And it's also because it's the internet. We can build 8-figure companies in 5 years. And that is just mind boggling to me still, because it used to take your grandpa decades to build an 8-figure business, and we can do it in 5 years now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, things are moving really faster than ever. And just like this podcast, we went a lot longer because we dove so far deep into a lot of different things about building businesses and process and how to making decisions, using different processes, some that you might develop yourself, some that you might borrow from other places. And so there's, I think that, I learned a lot today about, how to view, business from a different perspective. So Neil, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking time and sharing, your 17 plus years of knowledge with us today about, selling on Amazon and building businesses and processes and decision-making portals for all of our audience.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Ian. I appreciate it. And I'm honored to be a guest here today and just have a chance to speak to everybody.
All right. And there you have it. We're wrapping up another episode of Not Another eComm Podcast. This was Neil Twa, and I'm Ian Kaneshiro. We'll catch you next time.